right. We just got joined by our guest, Neil Villapiano from Devil's State of Mind. What's up, Neil?
I'm doing pretty darn good, honestly, considering what has happened the last two games to pull off two multi-goal comebacks against two Metropolitan Division foes, including your lovely team on
It's
Saturday.
it's
It
so hard to be
Take
mad
it
at
easy, Neil.
so hard to be mad at you, Neil.
it's fair
Just such a
enough.
happy guy. Just such
Neil,
a
Fair
what
enough.
happy
is
guy.
Neil, what does your last name mean? Piano Village?
It means no, it basically means like a Roman villa, like it's a small house and piano. That's literally what it means.
Piano is a town?
No, not a town. It's just literally like the instrument. Like it's
Oh,
literally like
okay.
a piano house. That's really what it like translates to basically.
Gotcha.
So if that makes sense. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm doing really good. Honestly, considering where the Devils are at this point in the season, exactly halfway through the year, um, I couldn't ask for anything more. I mean, really. I mean, they have this team has exceeded a lot of expectations, and now it's about really getting down to business in these final 41 games and trying to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Devils, I wanted to ask you about this. So the comeback that you mentioned in these two games against the Hurricanes and the Rangers, that's kind of been a theme for them the whole season. They got a team with a ton of firepower and speed, and they're relentless. And it's really frustrating watching a bunch of young kids out there fast and hungry for the puck, and it's difficult. So I was just wondering, look, did you really expect to get the goaltending you're getting this year going into the season?
I think we were hopeful that we were going to get decent goaltending. As far as the goaltending that VTech has played up until this point in the year, no, I didn't because he was always decent in Washington, but never at this level. So there was a lot of, we were clearly taking a risk, but it was the risk that we had to take because there weren't very many options for us to really go after anybody that could help us. And VTech ended up being the right guy at the right time. And he has really, really taken control of that number one spot, of that starting job. He feeds off of the rest of the team playing well, especially during that 13-game winning streak. The defense was sharp. The offense was rolling. All of it just gave him the confidence that he needed. And now he's showcasing that he can be a number one goaltender, and he's very reliable. If you look at the game against Carolina on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, we were getting outplayed for the first 39 minutes of action. And if it wasn't for VTech making a boatload of saves, even in that point when we were still down 3-1, we don't win that game. We don't make that comeback. The same thing can be said for the game against the Rangers on Saturday. He doesn't make some big time saves. We don't win that game, period.
Yep.
So for VTech to be as good as he's been so far this year has been tremendous. And no, we're not asking him to be a Vezina Trophy winner or anything like that. We're asking him to just be a solid goaltender with an above 900 save percentage. And that's what he has given us up until this point. And it's been
Yeah.
tremendous.
So you make a couple of points there. I mean, so the reason I asked that question is if you're coming back so often in games, usually what it means is you have terrible starts to the game or the goalie lets in some bad goals early. But what Vanacek seems to do really well is lock it down after it's 2-0 or even 3-0 or 3-1 down. He locks down the game. Like he gets in his zone and he locks it down and enables the Devils to come back. And he did that against the Rangers over the weekend.
Now, my question
That's
is,
absolutely correct. Yep.
my question is, do you think that's sustainable in a 7-game series in the playoffs where it's going to be more physical and the defense has to tighten up? You're telling me in the beginning of the season they were strong defensively, but if they're letting up goals early in a playoff series, I don't know if that's going to hold up. I mean, they got a lot more to learn.
This is why I appreciate Coach Ed, because he asks the really hard-hitting questions. This is very important for me. I think it's a very fair question to ask as far as can this be sustainable? First and foremost, I mean, prior to the 13-game winning streak ending, the Devils' problem was the fact that they would get off to bad starts, give up a goal or two, and put themselves behind the 8 ball before they could really get themselves going. It's still kind of an issue up until this point. This team is still, at the end of the day, we're the third youngest team in the NHL, and we're still learning how to try to win games and obviously get off to better starts. Some games we have, some games we haven't. We're average, more often than not, we're ending up out shooting and in some degrees outplaying our opponent. and we're just not getting what we need. And that is ultimately 8+ opportunities to score and ultimately finishing. But in terms of just the situation of giving up, goals like that, bang, bang, in those type of situations, no, it's not sustainable in terms of, finding a way to win these games, coming back, especially like you mentioned, Coach, in the playoffs when goal scoring is going to come a lot less. Everything's going to be tighter. Everything's going to be more physical, this, that, and the other thing. A lot of us are obviously not thinking about that, at least in the moment, because again, at the end of the day, for Devils fans and everybody who covers this team, we're focusing on this team just trying to get into the playoffs. But in terms of once they get in, yeah, that does become an absolute, that does become a problem. And I think that's where we're hoping.
You have to know that Lindy Ruff and any coach at this point that they're not, I'm not going to say locked as a playoff position, but they have to start thinking we have to get this team ready physically for the playoffs. They have to start getting in that mode. I mean, beating Carolina is definitely a good test for that.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I think that winning a game like against, Carolina, who, yeah, granted,
and the Rangers, obviously.
And the Rangers as well. I mean, you have to, Lindy Ruff mentioned this early in the year, you have to win these type of games if you want to get in the playoffs and you want to compete. You have to win these games. And the Devils of years past have not been able to compete and or win these games. Now that they're starting to do it more, and obviously on a more consistent basis, is important for a young team learning more and more how to win and how to be successful. And so it is a process. We are still not fully healthy. That's not really an excuse at all. And clearly we still have issues with Mackenzie Blackwood as the backup goaltender. I would not be surprised. I mentioned this on my podcast, and I've talked to fans a lot about this. Devils fans should not expect the Devils to go swing for a home run trade to get a guy like, Timo Meier or Patrick Kane. If they're going to do anything, they're going to get at least one or two big body guys like they did in 17-18 when they got Pat Maroon and when they made the trade to get Michael Grabner, just to kind of bring in a little bit more veteran, poise and things like that. That's the type of trades that I would see Fitzgerald wanting to make to prepare this team to getting into the playoffs and then ultimately going up against physical teams, because it's going to get even more physical for a young team like the Devils once the playoffs actually begin.
Do you think I don't mean to ask another question. I'll jump in Eddie and Ed, but do you think that they have the defense to do that? Or I would personally think they need to get more of a shutdown defenseman.
I would say that at full strength, the Devils do have a very, very good defense. I think we have a very deep defense. Okay. Prior to guys getting hurt, like we don't have John Marino right now. And John Marino was by far our best defensive defenseman. He would go out there and lock down a lot of our opponent's top players. He was doing a lot of really great work until he got hurt. Dougie Hamilton, offensively, tremendous. Defensively, drives me absolutely up the freaking wall because he is brutal. Even last night against Carolina, defensively, brutal.
I saw the highlights, yeah.
I know. Jonas Siegenthaler has been very, very good defensively. Ryan Graves being physical on the back end is important. All these things. Damon Severson, again, just like Dougie Hamilton, really solid offensively. Defensively, there's still so much to be desired. So in terms of just defense overall, I think when this team is at full strength, I think the defense is very, very good and can be very locked down. But in terms of like where we are right now, there's some holes and they're getting exposed. And you're seeing that in these last couple of games. Even the game against the Rangers. I mean, in the second goal, Gauthier scores. That's just poor defense, in my opinion. That's just poor defense by the Devils to not get back and not allow that. And those are kind of the holes that I'm talking about.
I mean, that Gauthier goal was just a sheer size and skill and speed play by Gauthier. I mean, you can't. I don't even.
Yeah, I know. I'm not for that.
I mean, that's just a great play. And
I'm not discrediting Gauthier. I mean, it was a tremendous goal. Do not get me wrong. I'm just saying, from the Devils' perspective, just a bad defensive play. It was like that shouldn't have happened, but still a good goal nonetheless.
Let me say this about your defense. You said John Marino is your best defensive defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rangers fans are very familiar with John Marino because we just played Pittsburgh in the playoffs last year. And he got bullied badly. Bullied
in the playoffs.
In the playoffs.
This is true, yes.
He was knocked out, hurt, banging him on forecheck. He was shying away, turning the puck. He was just throwing the puck away pretty much. He didn't want to get hit. So, look, if the Rangers are going to bully John Marino, you can expect any team that plays them are going to do that. I think what coach is trying to say is you guys need a veteran defense. You got a very young, talented defense group. I agree.
Correct.
But you need a veteran defender with some size on the back end. So,
and that's what the Devils were hoping for when we
maybe
signed.
they'll go after Jack Johnson.
not a veteran as in just like an old guy, like a quality player.
Again, it was, that was sort of the idea as to why they went after Brendan Smith in the offseason. But honestly, he's not good. Let me put it that way. He's
adequate. He fills in.
He's just there.
He's a coach at favorite. So
he's a locker room guy.
Yeah, he is a locker room guy. The guys in the locker room really respect him and appreciate what he brings in the locker room. But in terms of what you guys were saying before about just the fact of getting another veteran like defensive, that's kind of again what I'm leaning towards when it comes to what Fitzgerald might do in terms of the trade deadline, in terms of getting bigger, getting a little bit more physical, and just having somebody, not necessarily just a forward, because, we certainly do need some more size in the forward group, but also in the back end as well. And I think if we can swing a trade or two to get some more physical players like that, like you were just mentioning, and also just guys who could be a little bit more dependable in the back end, I think would go a long way.
Ed, what do you have for him? Because I got another question.
Yeah, if I can get a word in here between all you guys or amongst all you guys. I mean, we were on the subject of like the physicality, and I mean, I know I asked you this in our rivalry tour episode over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about like Jack Hughes holding up with his past injuries, shoulder injuries, getting hit more in the playoffs, and definitely a little more bump and grind, everywhere, because he's also very effective around or around the net and behind the net. And in the playoffs, that's time and space isn't really there.
No, it's a good point. And I think that Jack Hughes is just been smarter when it comes to the plays that he makes. He's not just going right into the corner and just exposing himself to getting absolutely mollywopped by whoever's in there. Although he does still hit big time. He got hit against Carolina in the last game. He has definitely become a lot tougher. He might really honestly be dealing with something and we just don't know about it. But at the end of the day, when it comes to just him sustaining it, I mean, he's played through the first 41 games of the year. He has improved in terms of, gaining strength and everything. I mean, nobody's really asked him in terms of like, what did he do during the offseason to improve? I know that was something that we talked about during the offseason about that. It is definitely something you think about as the season goes along. And certainly once you get into the playoffs, because of the physicality, of the lack of space, Jack Hughes has had a lot of space to do a lot of different things in a lot of games. It's not going to be that way consistently in the playoffs, unless you just are
and
just
towards
having
the end of the
so
season.
much luck. Yeah, exactly. Or towards the end of the season. So again, it's kind of one of those things where you're saying to yourself, they got a good thing going right now. And the question is, how is Lindy Ruff preparing this team, like in terms of practice? Are we looking at it just game by game? Are we trying to learn stuff as we're going along about, what we have to do? Because clearly when we play teams that play more of a physical style, like when we played Philadelphia, we get exposed a lot more, especially if the offense isn't rolling. We just get exposed on both sides of the ice. So Jack Hughes has been nothing but tremendous since the season started. And he has certainly developed himself into a leader both on and off the ice at this point. He has so far, knock on wood, has avoided anything major in terms of getting hit or injured or anything like that. But it is still definitely something to keep in the back of your mind if you're a Devils fan when you watch these games and you see him potentially get rocked. Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. It's just a matter of when and how and all the circumstances involved.
Well, let's see if Jacob Trouba can catch him in round one.
It's an interesting.
He's tough to catch. He's tough to catch. But
I saw an interesting segment about him, about how smart he is as a player, and that how he has learned what to do in the NHL, and that's why he's avoiding these plays in certain areas when he doesn't need to be in that area. I thought it was very interesting that he's so cerebral that it goes unnoticed. His skill is so good, people don't realize how much he studies the game and he's learning what to do and how to make himself better. It's kind of like on a Sidney Crosby level where he just learns how to do certain things when you need to do them.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's other guys like that. They were talking about it before about, how have the Devils' top guys stayed healthy up until this point? And that is because a lot of guys have just grown up They're wiser. They're more understanding of how the NHL game works. They know that there's certain areas that they can't go into because they're just going to get destroyed. And it's also about just being a little bit more nimble and being able to, not necessarily always have to go into the corner, because at the end of the day, that's a prime position for guys like a Jacob Trouba, like a bunch of physical players that are going to go after these guys. Because a lot of teams look at the Devils and say, you slow down their core guys, it's a done deal. We got
all this being said. Austin Matthews is hurt tonight, and they were talking about how they have a bunch more superstars to get away with it.
Right.
If Hughes goes down, what's your feeling on that team?
The feeling that goes into it is basically the next man up mentality at that point, because the Devils.
I get the next man mentality. I'm asking you, do you think they're capable of filling those shoes, 100-point player?
I think that it would be definitely a struggle. There's no question about that. I think that it would definitely be one of those, I don't want to say deflating situations, but it would be one of those things where it would take the Devils some time to, especially if it's an injury that puts him out for a period of time. It's one of those things that can be, that could really, really change the season as a whole. And if you asked me this question in November, I would feel a lot more confident about Nico and Bratt and all these other guys and the depth that we had, playing well. But now that we're at this point in the season and not everybody is really contributing on a consistent basis other than Jack Hughes, it is definitely more of a concern, because you feel like, and it's understandable looking from the outside looking in, that this really is like a one-man type of team. That's why winning last night against Carolina with Jack Hughes not even registering a point and it being our third and fourth line guys is so important, because to win games like that without your best players having to do anything or doing very little is important. But certainly if Jack Hughes was out for any length of time, which you've seen before last year with how much he's missed in the lineup, and the fact that he's on pace, at least right now, to potentially reach 100 points, it would be very difficult for this team to respond in the positive way and try to keep up the pace.
You said that Hughes developed into like a leader off the ice. I'm a little curious about this, because I don't really have that perception. I mean, I pay attention to Hughes. He's kind of comes off like a spoiled kid. He's been hockey royalty since he was like 15 years old. Mm-hmm. Everyone knew he was going to be a top pick, and he's dominated pretty much every level he's been at. Mm-hmm. And he gets interviewed after the Ranger game, and one of the reporters in the locker room says, yeah. So, did you if the Rangers won this, it's a big win. If the Rangers won this game, that they would have passed you in the standings. And his response was flatly, no, I didn't know that. And like, yeah, I get that's a stupid question. Like, it's obviously the team knows that. The Devils are aware that they're playing an opponent that's 1 point behind.
I know who asked the question, and it was definitely not the greatest question to ask at that time.
No, it's a dumb question. There's no question, but he didn't handle it. Like a leader off the ice would have been like, yeah, I know it's a big win. Mm-hmm. Just move on. Like, he kind of was like a jerk to the reporter. He has that kind of that's the impression he gives off, and I know the league is very happy with the young players like him and Zegras that are flashy. Right. He's got a lot of talent. Right now he's in the Hart Trophy conversation. There's no question that he's up there. And unfortunately, I just think that he's a devil. But so what are you seeing off the ice that he's becoming a leader? Because as an outsider, not someone following him daily, I don't see it.
So I think first and foremost, again, talking about looking from the outside looking in, definitely can understand where people are coming from with how Jack Hughes, at least, in public seems to, carry himself. It seems like he's a very cocky player, thinks that he's, above a lot of things. But at the end of the day, Jack Hughes has gone through a lot of humbling moments up until this point in his career, because, his first year, his rookie year, if we all remember, the dude had 18 points. And I don't think he had ever scored a total of 18 points in a season in his entire life. And then you had the COVID-shortened season where, again, he got off to a good start, and then he really just couldn't get it rolling. Last year, he really showed flashes of finally taking that next step, and then he started dealing with several injuries. At this point now, he has gone through a lot of losing, a lot of negativity from a lot of, different people within, the fan base, people outside the fan base. And I think that now that Jack Hughes finally has everything kind of together. I'm not saying that he's in the prime of his career because the kid is only 21 years of age. We have to remind ourselves that he is incredibly young even now. I mean, he's 4 years younger than I am, to be quite frank with you. That's how young Jack Hughes is.
That's it.
I know, right? That's literally it. I know it's incredible. But when I look at Jack Hughes, and again, I totally get that a lot of people were not thrilled about his response to that question about did he know that? Again, of course he knew the significance of everything, but I think for him, he definitely didn't handle that situation all that great. But in terms of just being a leader off the ice, this team feels very, very confident in him, not just as a tremendous player on the ice, because clearly when he goes, the rest of the team goes. There's no doubt about that. He's on his game, the rest of the team follows suit.
Yeah, but why? Why off the ice?
On the ice or in the locker room?
No, in the locker room. On the ice, I get it. He's a great player.
No, in the locker room, because, and this is again based off of, Nico Hischier talking about him and Damon Severson and different guys, especially guys who have been there longer than he has, is that in many ways, he's much more vocal. He's much more demanding of a lot of players. He's much more understanding. And you can see it even when you watch games just on the ice, how much he's talking to everybody on the team saying, trying to figure things out. He's constantly talking to Lindy Ruff. He's constantly talking to Andrew Burnett. He's doing all of these things, and he's carrying himself a lot more. He's much more involved in the community. He's much more involved in just a lot of different things because he recognizes the superstar talent that he is, but he also understands that right now the Devils are still not taken completely seriously by the entire NHL. There are still a lot of people out there that say, yeah, well, it's the Devils. Like he's trying to change that perception as long as the rest of the other guys. And
I got to believe he's
like
probably...
Keith Yandel.
I'm sorry?
Like Keith Yandel said they're not even going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I mean, Keith Yandel definitely played for the Rangers at one point, and he had a lot of success against the Devils in his career. So why wouldn't he think that way? I mean, Paul Bissonnette continuously thinks we're not making the playoffs, and we're 41 games into the season. So
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you about that.
I don't have a problem with him answering that question. I'd be sick and tired of these guys thinking they know more than you, and it's got to be frustrating. So
it's incredibly frustrating.
To me, that shows a little personality. I don't think he did it in a horrible way, but he got his point. Like, of course, he wanted to probably say, of course we know what's going on. I don't need to be asked that question.
It was, again, there was a situation earlier this year, to use another example, of like Eric Holla has been criticized a lot recently for the fact that he has barely scored any goals. And they kept asking him for weeks about, when is it going to come? When is it going to come? And eventually he kind of snapped on a report and said, I don't know, you guys seem to have all the answers to what's going on. So
it's got to be frustrating as a player.
It is frustrating. And there was a situation, and this kind of became very public when the Devils were in Montreal earlier this year. And I think it was right after Keith Yandel said that we were not going to make the playoffs. And at the time the Devils were on, I think at that point, 8 or 9 game heater, as Jack Hughes put it, and he kind of didn't know how to answer the question of, like, do you still feel that this team, struggles a lot? And he kind of looked at the reporter like with a blank stare and said, I mean, we're on a 9 game heater. I'd say we're doing pretty good.
The reality is whether or not, Coach, you think that wasn't a big deal. The players are paid based on how much money the league makes. That's how they get paid, right? And the league makes more money when there's more media, when there's coverage, when there's interviews.
Right. I get it, but he's allowed to be a little frustrated. He can't do every interview perfect, and he shows...
I don't think that's what a leader would do. That's all.
And he shows personality. I could see Trouba doing that.
No, Trouba answers every question. Look at his interviews.
I know,
he sits there and answers every single question.
Let him get to a point of frustration where he's asked the same question 10 games in a row, and he's going to snap a little bit.
And you have to
have a little bit of an issue.
The other thing just to understand as well is that this is the most media that a lot of these Devils players have ever experienced dealing with on a consistent basis.
Right.
Because now that they're much more in the news and everything like that, there's more reporters, there's more people asking questions, there's more interviews to be done. I mean, all these different things. Emily Kaplan of ESPN just posted a video talking about the Devils rebuild at this point and interviewing guys like Nico, Jack, Lindy Ruff, guys like that. And you could see Jack is just tired of being asked the same questions about when is this team going to be taken seriously? When is, in his mind, he kind of feels like, how many more games do we have to win? How many more records do we have to break, so to speak, before people start saying that? And that's
40 games, Jack. Take it easy. You didn't even make the playoffs yet.
Let me put it and that's a good point, Ed, because here's why. the Devils still haven't made the playoffs. You know, like they haven't done anything up until this point. If you really think about it, they haven't done anything. They still have 41 games to go. Nobody's clinched the playoffs yet. Boston is on an incredible historic run right now. They haven't clinched the playoff spot yet. So, like, there's still a lot of hockey left to play. But I lean more towards, again, what Coach was saying about how it definitely is frustrating that you get that a lot of time these reporters ask a lot of the same questions over and over again. But in terms of Jack Hughes, it's not necessarily cockiness, it's more confidence from him. That's what you're really seeing. And I understand that it can rub people the wrong way, but we also don't have a lot of personalities in the NHL, even now, that feel that comfortable to make statements like that or make comments that might seem like I thought it was more of just all fun and games type thing, but I can understand from an outsider's perspective why some people might think that Jack Hughes is still not, fully mature. But again, the kid is
he's definitely
21
still learning.
years of age.
Exactly.
He is still learning.
Well, before we let you go, Neil, we really appreciate it. We got to try kind of address the elephant in the room. Kind of like, I'm not really asking your question, but we just want you to want your opinion on Kakko and Lafreniere's development, I guess, versus Hughes. I mean, I know before the season, we were having a lot more high hopes that Laffy was going to break out the season. I know Kakko was doing a lot better. But I'm sure our fans or Ranger fans would be curious to hear maybe an outside perspective or a Devils fan perspective on that.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm not one of the guys that's constantly going to berate the Rangers about, Jack Hughes versus, Lafreniere or Jack Hughes versus Kaapo Kakko or anything. I'm not going down that road. To me, it's unnecessary. It's two teams in two very different positions in terms of roster construction. First and foremost, the Rangers got Lafreniere, and I kept saying it to Rangers fans that he doesn't have to come in and be the superstar. He can come in and just be a role guy on this team, and that's what he's done. Now, when he got benched recently, I think, what was it, last week he got benched for a game or whatever the case was, I was kind of head scratching on that one. I was like, he hasn't played all that poorly. I mean, it's not like he's been awful by any means. But in terms of development, here's the thing that I will argue with. The Rangers, a good majority, not everybody, a good majority of their players are not necessarily homegrown guys. They've gotten a lot of guys in free agency, gotten a lot of guys in trade. They've done an excellent job of developing Igor Shesterkin. There is no question about that. And the defenseman as well. I mean, Keandre Miller is a phenomenal find, by the way. Phenomenal. And that goal that he scored, what was it, last night against Minnesota? It was just phenomenal. I love this kid. I loved him in college, and I think he's a really, really good player.
And Schneider, too.
Schneider as well, which he's definitely stepped up his physical game this year, which I know a lot of Rangers fans were kind of critical of that last year in the playoffs, and even during this, in the short part of the season, they were kind of getting on about that. But going back to Lafreniere and Kakko, here's the thing. Kakko is fine, okay? He's not a bust. He's fine. He actually has improved. He's more physical. He's much more of a power forward, and he's just like Jack Hughes. Sometimes it just takes guys longer to develop. This year for Jack Hughes is the first time he's really consistently been getting everything going. It might take him a little bit longer. It might also be the coaching as well. I can't speak on a consistent basis what the lines are like and how, Gallant is coaching them. But Lindy Ruff, when he coaches Jack Hughes and all these young guys, he just wants them to go out there and be aggressive offensively and fire everything at the net. I see a lot with Gallant being a little bit more balanced of both offense and defense. And I think that there's roles that guys are still trying to find. And I think Lafreniere and Kakko, more Lafreniere than Kakko, is still trying to find their role long-term on this team.
Yes.
And there are two very young players on a much more veteran team with a team that literally just went to the conference finals last year. And, that kid line that they had was tremendous. I mean, that's where I felt like, okay, now they're going to start getting going. Lafreniere's got himself going. Kakko seems to have a little bit more confidence and things like that. But
don't forget Kakko also was on the European ice surface. That was his big adjustment, in my opinion.
And that's a very good point. And I think that's another reason why people were so high on Kakko coming into the draft, because he had come from a adult league. He had played against a lot of, older players and things like that. But it's a very good point, Ed, because, Alexander Holtz, our top our top prospect, he's still getting adjusted to playing on North American ice. This is his first full year in the NHL, and he's still struggling to find a role in this team. So in terms of it, I would say this to Rangers fans, don't panic about Lafreniere and Kakko. If they find roles on this team where they're consistently doing their job and doing it well, whether that's being a power forward, checking line, a guy that could be consistent maybe on a power play or something like that, then that works. I understand the frustration of feeling like you didn't nail it on the head with these picks, but at the same time, they're still learning the NHL game. And Lafreniere, this kid has the ability to be very, very good. I just think sometimes he's not put in the right position to succeed. I don't see him all the time being in situations, I guess
Cousin Ed's happy.
Like that one. It's like I'd like to see him on some situations with Zibanejad and with
we're going to see that. So we're
going to see that. Kreider just went down with a minor shoulder injury, so Laffy's getting bumped up.
Neil, one final question. I kind of need a yes or no answer on this. We're running out of time.
Sure.
If the Devils don't make the playoffs or get knocked out in the first round, say, Lindy Ruff here or not?
No. Even if we make the playoffs, he's not coming back after this year.
Okay.
We have Andrew Burnett as an associate coach for a reason.
I said yes or no. That's it.
The answer is no. He really is a coach. He really is a coach. Honestly,
telling me a depot.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, so you're going to say no? They have someone in the works that's ready to come in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or Barry Trotz.
Awesome.
Or Barry Trotz.
He should be because he's not a good coach. Anyway, Coach Ed loves Lindy Ruff.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I love him. I think he does a good job. He did a good job in Buffalo developing players, and they moved on, and I think he's good at that. But we'll see.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Anyway, little Ed, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Neil to plug all of his stuff and say whatever he wants to say before we let him go.
Yeah. So again, guys, you can check out the Devil's State of Mind podcast. New episodes out every Monday and Thursday. I'll have an episode out tomorrow, kind of recapping the first half of the season for the Devils. You can check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, just drop a 5-star rating. It goes a long way. Also, give a 5-star rating to these boys right here. These guys are just absolutely tremendous. These guys are great. Love interacting with them on so much different stuff, whether it involves the Devils or Rangers or not. It's all great. Follow us on Twitter at Devil State. Also on Instagram at Devil State of Mind. And if for some reason you still have a Facebook, make sure to leave us a like on Facebook as well.
I don't have any of these things, by the way.
Actually, Coach, I assumed that you at least had a Facebook. I was going to say, I feel like you have a Facebook. And also, guys, just keep up the great content. I definitely watch all the time. I love the vlogs with Coach Ed going to the Rangers game. Those are always a blast. I enjoy watching that. And definitely, it has been a fun year in terms of the games played in this year's Hudson River Rivalry. And that last one, which is now, I think, about 2 months away, now that I think about it, it's certainly a long time from now. Going to be a lot of fun. And we'll see. We'll see if both teams, if the hockey gods want to just be funny about it, maybe we'll see each other in the playoffs down the road. So we'll see.
Yeah, but I want to thank you, Neil, because we have good fortune with our Islander rival group. And you stepped right in, and you're very real about what your opinions are on the Rangers as well and the Devils. So it's nice to see.
Yeah,
thank you. I
thank
appreciate
you, Neil.
it.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Really appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, man. So check out Neil's podcast, Devil's State of Mind, if you want to listen to some Devils information for whatever reason. But check him out on social. Check him out on social media too. He posts good content, and he's always a fun guest to have.
There's
on.
no way he has like a co-host because they wouldn't be able to talk.
He could chat, man. He could chat. Yeah, definitely. No, guys.
No, Eddie, you've been quiet for too long.
I've been trying to get a word in, man. His social media. I know he gave us a lot of props on our social media, our Instagram, but I get a lot of ideas from him, and I'm sure he gets some ideas from me. We definitely have a good relationship in that aspect. So shout out to Neil. Like I said, it's hard to be mad at him. It's hard to have any kind of a rivalry with him because, if you guys see on YouTube, he's just the happiest kid in the world. So good for him. And forget about the Devils.
Yeah.
Go Rangers.
Let's put that last game in the past.
Yeah.